Welcome back to Music Kingdom. While I describe my music taste as broad, diverse, and eclectic, the genre of metal, while I have reverence for it, while I do appreciate it and respect it, has never been one that I would consider myself well versed in or super educated on, and I'm hoping to change that and explore more of the genre. So in this video, we are listening to, giving a music theory breakdown for, and reviewing Master of Puppets by Metallica. Hang tight. Hey music lovers, my name is Francis. If you'd like to support the work I put into these videos, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support the channel even further, you'll find Music Kingdom's Patreon and other affiliate links in the description below. Alright, now before we give the song a listen, first let's briefly talk Master of Puppets by Metallica. And a few disclaimers, right? I want to acknowledge that, to my knowledge, Master of Puppets is by no means a deep cut of Metallica. Rather, not even in between, Master of Puppets, to my knowledge, is perhaps their biggest or one of their biggest songs ever. So I just wanted to acknowledge that because, for example, if I was watching a video, and I'm a Michael Jackson guy, right? So if I'm watching a video and someone's like, non-Michael Jackson fan listens to Michael Jackson, and they choose like Billie Jean or Thriller, I would roll my eyes and cringe because I would rather them listen to some obscure deep cut from like the 1995 album History or something like that to get a better idea of who he was. So I get that in terms of Metallica, diehard metalheads or Metallica fans would probably, I'm assuming, rather me listen to some kind of obscure deep cut. However, we've got to start somewhere, and because I'm not too versed in Metallica, I wouldn't even know where to begin, so please let me know your recommendations as well. And for what it's worth, I did consider Iron Maiden, I did consider Pantera, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, but a lot of my friends who are into metal were recommending that I just start with good old-fashioned Metallica. With that out of the way, another quick disclaimer. As mentioned, I'm not a metalhead. However, that does not mean I am anti-metal. It just happens to be one of those particular genres that I just haven't learned all too much about. Having said that, as mentioned, I do have respect for it, I do have reverence for it, and even on the subject of Metallica, I do know a very small handful of Metallica songs. However, predictably, they are kind of the ballads by Metallica, so when I was asking my friends, they did recommend Master of Puppets, probably because it is more upbeat and is more of a genuine metal song. Something else I've heard about the genre of metal, and you'll have to let me know in the comments if this is true, but I've heard that a lot of the genre of metal is inspired by classical music, which I find very interesting and very beautiful. I think a lot of non-metalheads think of the genre of metal as just loud, obnoxious noise, not really appreciating or understanding that a lot of it is compositionally complex and a lot of it is derived from other genres of music and artistry. Now back to Master of Puppets, I have been told that the show Stranger Things used it in one of their episodes recently and that it got a new wave of popularity by a lot of people who aren't even into metal. But for what it's worth, that is not why I chose the song, because I do not watch Stranger Things. Now typically in this channel's videos, before we give the song a listen, we do talk about history and context regarding whatever track or album we are reviewing in the video. However, I'm willing to wager whether 10 people see this, whether 50 people see this, whether 100 people see this, 99% of you are going to be metalheads, which means there's really not anything I can say about Master of Puppets, the track or the album, that you don't already know. So what I'm going to do is still give some brief information for maybe someone who stumbled upon this who doesn't know a whole lot about it, but otherwise I'll encourage you to let me know in the comments more history and more facts and trivia and context regarding Metallica, the album Master of Puppets, and the song itself. Otherwise, yes, Master of Puppets is the album title track from the third studio album by Metallica, Master of Puppets from 1986. To my knowledge, the album received widespread acclaim from critics for both the music and the lyrics. To my knowledge as well, it is also widely considered to be one of the greatest and most influential metal albums of all time. So much so, and I'll refer to my notes, that in 2015, Master of Puppets became the first metal recording to be selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the National Recording Registry for being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. In addition to that, to my knowledge as well, it is the last album Metallica ever recorded with their bassist Cliff Burton, which I would assume to some extent would also have a way of immortalizing the album. Now with that all out of the way, it's time we give the song a listen, and be sure to stick around after the song for a music theory breakdown. Then we're going to break apart the song into different categories, arriving at an overall score. I like how the intro grabs you immediately. Very sharp. Oh my god. I don't know much about Metallica's drummer. Actually, I don't know anything about the drummer, but I'm loving what he's doing. Well-written lyrics. Interesting vocals as well. The vocals sound good, but I'm trying to figure out if they're impressive or not in terms of difficulty. It's very interesting for me to try to dissect a world of music that I'm just very unfamiliar with. I love the little change ups rhythmically. The changes are subtle, but you notice them. So far I'm digging it. However, I feel it is a bit redundant so far. Oh, that's gorgeous. Oh my god. Oh, that is so nice. This is what I was hoping would happen. And I hate to use this word, but there is a bit of swag to this. It's a great solo. You guys will have to tell me if it's improvised or not. What an excellent interlude. It's gorgeous. Oh, the drumming. Oh my god. What a segue back to where the song started. Oh, shit. Oh my god. I was already impressed. Let's put this down. What a trip. It's so well composed. It's so well put together. Drugs, I assume. This must be exhausting for them to perform live. I love whatever's happening with the guitars. Well produced as well. Wow, what a journey that was. Initial thoughts, as mentioned, what a journey that was, but I think the better word is what a trip that was. It almost makes you wish you were tripping. That is my first time listening to the song, at least closely, delicately, in its entirety. There might have been times in the past I've heard it, right? But not actually tuning into it. And immediately blown away by the composition is the first thing that just comes to mind with that song. And I think that's important to note because for anyone out there who perhaps has an ignorant opinion of metal music and just, as mentioned, thinks it's just a lot of noise, there are a lot of intricacies that go into composing a metal song, at least one of this magnitude in my opinion. Now obviously based on my own reaction, I would say that the slower interlude during the song was the takeaway for me. That was absolutely stunning, and I thought it was so smooth how they transitioned it back to where the song began. And in that interlude I did get vibes of early 70s Queen. I'm talking Queen 1 or Queen 2, but like a more metal version of it, definitely less glam. In addition to that, I also thought the lyrics were very well written, and that's another thing that I would just assume that a lot of non-metalheads or people who just have no taste for metal kind of disregard, and I think that perhaps, and you'll have to let me know if I'm correct, I would assume that lyrically speaking in the genre of metal, they are atop the most important aspects and factors of a metal song to begin with. While I won't claim to be a metalhead by any stretch of the imagination, to my knowledge, from what I have heard, what little I've heard, some metal songs or many metal songs are some of the most poetically written songs in music. Now before I, myself, a non-metalhead, will have the audacity and the balls to review the lyrics, the vocals, the composition, the production, the originality, etc. First, let's go to the expert's corner for a music theory breakdown and to hear what he has to say.
Welcome to the Expert's Corner. This is Master of Puppets by Metallica. Now the song is mainly in the time signature of 4/4. I'll explain more on that later. And it's in the key of E minor. However, you don't often hear the key E minor because it's mostly power chords in this song. A power chord is when a triad, or a typical chord, has the middle one taken out, so it's just the 1 and the 5. So instead of E minor, you would have E5. So normally at this part, I would pick a part of the song and explain to you the chord progressions, but for this song it's going to be a little different. I want to talk about this time signature thing they do. Earlier today I was listening to this song, admittedly for the first time, and I was trying to figure out what the heck is going on right here. Bottom line, I couldn't figure it out. I had no earthly idea what was happening there. I tried to count it, I tried to subdivide it. It broke my brain. I even asked another fellow musician at work and he couldn't figure it out. So I turned to Google, and it turns out this is a pretty highly discussed topic for Metallica fans. People just want to know what time signature is that measure in. The bottom line from what I was able to figure out is that according to Metallica it's a bar of 5/8. But when you really listen to it, it doesn't quite make sense as a 5/8. It's actually something between 5/8 and 6/8, not either one, but something in the middle. So when people really broke it down, subdivided the notes even further, The most accurate answer is that it's in 2132. Time signature of 2132. Now, no one really thinks that Metallica did that on purpose or composed it in the time signature of 2132. They just kind of rushed this section a bit and did it with the flow, but that's what it ended up being, and that's really cool. It blew my mind. So admittedly, I'm not much of a metal fan. I'm really not a metal fan at all. I don't know anything about Metallica, but I listened to this whole song today for the first time, and I was kind of blown away. It's incredibly intricate. It has differing time signatures, which you don't hear in mainstream music. It has a beautiful interlude. That bit in the middle where it softens up, it actually has some beautiful composition. That guitar solo is mind-blowing as well. So overall, despite this genre not really being my cup of tea, I have to recognize that this song is a very well-crafted work of art, and I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Back to you, Francis.
A very special thank you to our expert for providing a music theory breakdown and giving the song a very respectable 7.5 out of 10. And now it's time to break the song apart into 5 more categories and arriving at an overall score. Starting out with composition specifically, I'm giving the song's composition an 8.5 out of 10, which is exceptionally strong. And I'm going to assume that our music expert already broke down at length the compositional complexities of the song, so I'll keep this segment on the brief side. Whether we're talking about compositional things such as changes in time signature or complexities of the rhythm, the very intricate and well-crafted guitar solo, the beautifully composed interlude, as well as the super fast tempo with the quick guitar riffs, all combine for a very compositionally intricate and impressive song. Moving on to the category of production, this one was a bit of a head scratcher, but I'm inclined to give this song's production specifically a 6 out of 10. And here's the thing, regarding music, whether it's music from the 60s, the 80s, current music, production can sound like the usage of strings. Production can sound like throwing horns at a song, or just different layers and colors and complexities that your ears hear. Nowadays, production can be very complex. In older days, it could be as simple as the arrangement. But in the genre of metal, and I don't mean to hold this against the genre of metal or by any means say this as an insult, but you're essentially dealing with a rock band with a drummer and a bassist and a guitarist and a singer, and there really isn't much production going on by nature of it being a metal band. Outside of the outro to this song with the laughing sounds that they give you, which would be production, otherwise this song really doesn't have one. So I could either do an NA for not applicable, or I could go middle of the road for a 5 out of 10, but I am gonna give it a 6 simply because it is still very sharp. And even though they're not really producing this in a very complex way or a technological way, you can still feel that it's very clean, it's very sharp, it's very sophisticated, and it's well done, as opposed to something that could sound a bit sloppy or muddy. Up next, we have the subject of vocals, which I am specifically going to give a strong 7 out of 10. And this is also a bit conflicting because this is why I had the audacity in the first place. How can I be new to metal and hear a song for the first time and then go and grade it? Because that's what we do on this channel, right? So take it a bit with a grain of salt. But vocals being a 7 for me is because I want to acknowledge how impressive the vocals are. I want to acknowledge that it is straining on the voice to sing like that. While it wasn't screamo, no, it was still very difficult to get out. That's what I was trying to gauge as I was listening to the song. However, I am not grading these vocals up against other metal vocals of its own genre. I'm grading vocals in the entirety of music. That's kind of how we gauge things on this channel. And so there isn't necessarily falsetto, there isn't necessarily vocal runs, nor is the singer of the song necessarily hitting, in my opinion, difficult notes. Now the sound that he has, the aggression that he has, that I would consider difficult, which is why I respect it enough to give it a 7, but it's not necessarily this amazing singing vocal performance. So to some degree, I feel like I'm being fair because a non-metalhead could easily hear that and say, that's not singing, that's just screaming. No, I do appreciate what it is and how impressive it is. But if we're talking about music or the history of music or some of the greatest vocalists to ever exist in the music industry, those would warrant 8s, 9s, and the very rare 10 out of 10. Moving right along to the category of lyrics, I'm giving them specifically a very strong 8.5 out of 10. And not to be redundant, because I already mentioned this briefly, but I do feel there is a lot of ignorance towards the genre of metal regarding the lyrics in general. A lot of people, I think, are quick to dismiss what is written pen to paper when it's delivered in a way that is a bit niche, that is a bit of an acquired taste, which the genre of metal is. However, in this song, they absolutely were clear enough to understand, but even if they weren't, you could read along and see how well written they are. I had to check after the fact, but while I was listening, I did get the impression it was some kind of metaphor for self-control or discipline, which I would mentally allude to the subject of drugs. And sure enough, once I did a little bit of internet research, that is ultimately what the song is about. And personally, in my opinion, I thought it was a very clever and creative way to tell the story of battling that type of drug addiction, veiled well, in my opinion, as a metal metaphor. Now, are these the most beautifully written poetic lyrics of any genre of any decade ever? No. However, I do think they are exceptionally good, and I can understand the acclaim and the praise for not just this album, but the song itself. Now, arriving at our final category of originality and or inspiration, I am giving this song an 8 out of 10. If you weigh everything we mentioned about the composition, if we weigh everything I just talked about regarding the lyrics, how it was delivered, how it was all very well put together in an original way, I feel the song is very strong in that regard. So when I'm talking about inspiration or originality, another synonym for that might be vision, right? Is this something truly creative and artistic? Or is it something more generic, more redundant that just disappears among the rest? And even if we ignored this song's stature among some of the greatest metal songs by anyone ever, if we just isolate the song for what it is, I would still, ignoring that, say that this song is very fresh. It does have vision, it does have a purpose, it does have an identity. It is what I would consider very artistic. Do I feel it is truly unique and artistic enough to warrant a 9 or a 10? Subjectively, in my opinion, no. However, evidently, it is original and inspired enough to have the reputation, historically speaking, that it has. So if we add it all up, throw in the expert score and average it out, Master of Puppets by Metallica from their third studio album, also titled Master of Puppets from 1986, gets a very healthy 7.6 out of 10. Now, speaking to metalheads, I can absolutely already feel a bit of sacrilege with this being one of the most revered metal songs in the history of the genre, getting a grade that, in my opinion, 7.5 is very good, but it's just shy, in my opinion, of being great, right? In my opinion, 8s, 9s, and 10s would truly be great, nearing perfection. And for me, a 7 or a 7.5 is about as good as it gets before that tier. So acknowledging that this song, in the eyes of history and the hearts of listeners, is just so well respected, I feel like I'm committing a bit of a crime. However, to dial it back to my own life, right? And I always use MJ as an example. I would give some of his biggest, most iconic hits 6s or 7s or maybe 8s, because I know that a lot of the deep cuts that a lot of other people don't know about are some of the most incredibly made songs ever, right? So I am wanting to give Metallica some benefit of the doubt, assuming that many of you fans might know of some deep cuts out there that you would rate eons above whatever you would give this one. Either way, let me know in the comments if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if I'm warmer, if I'm colder, if I'm batshit out of my mind. And of course, for someone like myself who is wanting to dip their toes more in the world of metal music, drop any recommendations that you have below. In addition to that, what we do on this channel is listen to and review music, so any recommendations for this channel to do as well, please let us know. As mentioned, if you'd like to support the work I put into these videos, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support the channel even further, you'll find Music Kingdom's Patreon and other affiliate links in the description below. This has been another edition of Music Kingdom. Thank you so much for listening with me, and I'll look forward to jamming with you in the next one.